When the evil and tortured soul of Ted Bundy was put to dubious rest last month, society was again reminded, with a jolt, the unfathomable and dark shadow of humanity that haunts us in stalking silence, only to explode in a frightening, screeching bloodbath: the serial killer. Right now, experts believe there are up to 500 serial killers roaming the country as free men, even free women. They could be ex-cons, your next-door neighbor, the family doctor, a hospital worker, all from different walks of life with one thing in common: a blind, inexplicable lust for blood. Viewers are warned that they might find some segments of this piece disturbing. But in the meantime, come with me on a very scary journey. I always feel cold when I walk on death row.
I was getting rid of people that shouldn't have been on this earth. That's how I felt, that they were rotten.
It was 10 straight murders that they convicted me on.
He has murdered at least 20 people that I know of, 13 that he's been convicted of.
I am walking with the elite of evil. The hand swinging by the side of the man I am talking to has shot, stabbed, strangled, and drowned more than 100 human beings. Human beings that he never knew, human beings that he'd never even seen before.
I could picture a place right now where there's 16 bodies.
Joseph Fisher first learned to kill in World War II as a Marine. He murdered his first civilian in 1946, smashed a friend's head in with a rock. He was sentenced to life in a New Jersey prison.
Well, I was a son of a bitch when I was young, in the prison. I killed a guy in the prison, and I stabbed guys in the prison, and I had fights with the cops. I was pretty f***ed up.
After 30 years in jail, Fisher was let out of prison, and his World War II was nothing compared to the war he waged on humanity. And he did this in a 2-year period starting in 1978.
I never should have been allowed out. I know that now.
But you think you should have been executed?
Positively. Positively.
But how many people did you kill?
Over 100.
What did you kill with?
Guns and knives most of the times. Sometimes I did it with my hands.
It didn't matter how he did it, but hands were as good as anything.
Well, it was with my hands that I knocked him out. It was a truck driver. So there was some wire laying around, and I tied him to the tree, and I put a piece around his neck. And they found him that the wire, I probably tried to get loose or something, cut his head off. I threw some in the river, tied him up and threw him in the river.
Joseph Fisher is a member of an ever-expanding, frightening fraternity, a grim phenomenon of the past 3 decades, the serial killer. From out of the dark shadows of the serial killer's mind, men like Dr. Joel Norris have charted the dramatic increase of these murders. Dr. Norris has traveled the country probing more than 200 killers who have committed the ultimate outrage, men who the experts call recreational killers.
In 1958, the epidemic began. We've had serial killers all throughout history. Every decade or so, we would see 1 or 2. And in 1958, we started seeing 1 or 2 a year. Then by 1982, we began seeing 2 a month.
Men like Ted Bundy, who slaughtered over 33 women. Men like John Wayne Gacy, who murdered over 30 young boys while dressing as a clown. Men like David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, who gave New York a massive nervous breakdown in 1978. Men like Kenneth Bianchi, the infamous hillside strangler. And men like Henry Lee Lucas. Henry Lee Lucas, a twisted lowlife. Here in Huntsville Prison on the windswept plains of Texas, Henry Lee Lucas languishes on death row, convicted of 10 murders. He once confessed to 360 murders, which which would have made him the most horrifying serial killer in criminal history. Now, perhaps too late, he says it was all a terrible mistake. Out of this nightmare of bloodshed and denial, he does admit to one murder. Can you remember the day you killed your mother?
Yeah, it was on the 12th of January, 1960. And I'll never forget that. I remember hitting her, but I don't remember stabbing her.
What did your mother do?
She was working as a prostitute.
Lucas, together with a partner, a misfit named Otis Toole, went on a chilling murder spree from 1978 to 1983. Both Toole and Lucas led cops to bodies and to murder scenes. Texas Rangers believe the pair was responsible for more than 350 murders. Lucas now says he was forced into confessing, which is hard to swallow when you view this 1983 confession with his lawyer pleading with him to shut up.
Henry, I'm going to tell you one more time, you're talking yourself into a very possible death penalty case.
I have to go with whatever goes. I mean, I can't help it.
I'm advising you not to make any further statement to terminate this interview.
Well, I've already tried to kill myself, so they ain't going to do nothing but kill me for me, so it don't make no difference. I can't live with it. Go ahead. Well, after I pulled over, I grabbed her by the neck and choked her until she died. And I had sex with her again.
Texas Ranger Captain Bob Prince headed up the task force which caught Lucas and Otis Toole. Toole is now awaiting execution in Florida. Lucas had a particularly disgusting modus operandi.
Sometimes he would kill the female victims for sex prior to death or after death. As we talked earlier, he's a necrophiliac, one that prefers sex after death. Lucas seemed to thrive on murders. Lucas and Toole both seemed to thrive on the excitement they would get from the murders and lived on reliving these highs.
360 murders that you've confessed to. And you've got Mr. Otis Toole, who says he's confessing, and he says that you and he were homosexual lovers and that you did these murders together. You're obviously in a lot of trouble.
I am in a lot of trouble.
Do you think about execution very much?
You know, there's more to life than just death. And they could take even me or somebody else and make something out of themselves. Just because they've committed a murder doesn't mean that it's going to be constant. It's just something that happened at the time of the crime.
So you don't believe in the death penalty?
No, I never have believed in the death penalty.
Understandably. Now remember, the one murder Lucas admits to was his mother, a prostitute. In a bizarre parallel, Joe Fisher's mother was also a prostitute.
Well, I wanted to kill her, but my father loved her. And I love my father enough not to.
But Fisher's victims, in his mind, always looked the same. Sometimes you saw them as your mother. Sometimes
I would see the Johns that were telling me go to movies or something like that.
And that was just as bad as seeing your mother?
Yeah. I hated them.
So when Joe Fisher, killer of more than 100 humans, saw a truck driver in Flagstaff, Arizona, who was challenging him to a drinking contest, he saw a customer of his mother, the prostitute.
So I whacked him in the head, and I took all the whiskey I had and poured it down inside of him. And he died.
It's a hell of a hangover. 103-year-old Walla Walla prison in Washington State, where Kenneth Bianchi studies law while serving a life sentence for the gruesome, blood-curdling hillside stranglings. He confessed to the crimes, but now he says he made the confession because he was brainwashed.
I would say to everybody, if they could just, for a time, in the name of the Lord, in the name of God, just set aside their ill feelings towards the ill and the incarcerated and those who are depressed, those who are in trouble, and love them You know, we have such a short time, I believe, on this earth, and we have no time for anger and hatred and bitterness.
I meet Kenneth Bianchi with those words of Christian fellowship ringing in my ears. I think of the innocent girls he slaughtered, 10 in California, 2 in Washington State.
And I haven't a clue what it could feel like to take a human being's life. Human beings have, a life is invaluable. A life is precious. How can anybody take a life? I can't comprehend that. And when I see that happening, where someone has taken a life, I mean, it's got to piss you off to no end. It's got to make you angrier than hell, just enough to scream sometimes.
In 1979, he pretended to have a split personality. He claimed it was his other self who committed the murders.
I don't like you. I don't like you at all.
Well, why don't you like me? Pardon me. It isn't Candace.
No, it's not. It's Steve.
Oh, okay.
Together with his cousin, Angela Bono, they ran 2 prostitutes. And then they ran decadence. Then brutality. Then murder. Then worse. Retired Sergeant Bob Grogan, part of the Hillside Strangler Task Force, jolts himself from gentle retirement to recall those grisly days.
They were into necrophilia. We knew that Bono had a homosexual relationship with his son. I believe he also had a homosexual relationship with Bianchi. I think that's what he used to keep control of Bianchi. I think a lot of serial murders are into necrophilia.
You went to great extremes to confess.
It was because I wanted to please, in some part of me, wanted to please those who were questioning me. I was role-playing here. I had learned real quickly that to please these guys, I was in good stead. But to now please these guys, I was in trouble. These guys would yell and scream and threaten to pack up and leave, and I was facing the death penalty.
He had killed so much, yet so frightened of death. So he made a deal, ratted out his cousin, Angelo Bono, putting him on death row. Then he made confessions and evidence piled up. Suddenly, the Hillside Strangler says he didn't do it.
Of course he killed those people. He knows he killed them. I know he killed them. A lot of people know he killed them.
As we walk in the grounds of the women's prison in Washington State, Veronica recalls how she was a promising actress, how she was producing a play which she wanted to turn into a horror movie, how she visited Bianchi in jail for authentic material on killers, how she came under his spell, how he ordered her to commit a copycat murder to convince cops the Hillside Strangler was still on the loose.
I remember him telling me that it won't be you doing it. It'll be me. He pulled out this band that he had made. He had torn his shirt, and he had made this rope. And then he proceeded to show me this news.
He is showing you how to kill someone.
Yeah. And he says, I'm going to be dead in 2 weeks if you don't go out and kill somebody. And, you know, and look at Veronica, it won't be you. It'll be me. It'll be my hands. Just say my name. I'll be there. I'll be doing it. It won't be you.
I don't know her. I never knew her.
Bianchi was reminded of this exchange of so-called love poems. Your virginal neck is so beautiful with grace and wondrous structure. With expert precision, my knife's razor's edge skates across your jugular vein. And then comes a deep, rich redness. I drink fondly. Bianchi then suddenly loses his amnesia.
Yeah, I wrote love poems to this woman. I'm like that, you know. I write when I'm in love with someone.
Veronica went out on a mission of murder, tried to strangle a woman to death. A moment of madness that landed her in jail on an attempted murder charge.
I took this noose out of the drawer and put it around her neck and started pulling. I straddled her and I pulled.
What drove Bianchi's psychotic hate?
Yeah, I remember he made a big deal about whores.
Really?
Yeah. He hated whores. But he thought his mother was one.
She was working as a prostitute.
I hated them.
In the serial killer's mind, they're doing good for society when they kill. They're ridding the world of prostitutes, or manipulative women, or homosexuals, or drifters, or derelicts.
I had a spot. A lot of people used to come there. And I might hit shit, 7, 8, 9, 10 a day. I was just sitting there. I was just like a wolf waiting for a rabbit. And when he came, I would get him.
How did you feel after you'd murdered?
Nothing. Nothing. In fact, it was like I had to do it. It had to be done.
I have a sudden feeling of chill, a deep need to get into the sunshine of the living. I always feel cold when I walk on death row.
Coming up next.